Guys, what do we say? If there's a pump, there's a dump, and if there's a dump, there's a pump. When there's a dump, there's a pump, and when there's a pump, there's a dump. Okay, breaks the neckline, you see it come down and then touch that neckline again, and then head up, because that is a very strong possibility, and that is a bullish possibility. That's right, when there is a pump, there is a dump, and when there is a dump, there is a pump. As you saw from that clip from yesterday, guys, we expect this pullback, but we have two key targets of where it could go. But more importantly, what is the long-term possibility of this move? Because we believe things are just getting started. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Wow, welcome back to the episode, guys. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2020, and boy, do we have some exciting stuff to get into today with these charts. It's only just beginning. This is so exciting, but guys, we really have to continue off of yesterday because there is some very much expected but also interesting movement. More importantly, guys, I want to talk about where I could see Bitcoin going by the middle of this year, okay? So summer of this year. Okay, very interesting thing. We usually don't talk that far in advance, but we have some very interesting data and very interesting stuff that we want to show you in this video. 2020, as we said before, could be one of the hypest years of cryptocurrency since the magic year of 2017. Absolute game changer of a year. Lives were changed and lives were ruined. As we talked about in yesterday's video, we have a lot to get into in regards to this pullback because this is what we wanted. Guys, this is a bullish thing. I hope nobody's too discouraged. Anybody watching these videos is not discouraged because as we were at $8,400 yesterday, we were saying, guys, a healthy pullback is expected and part of this pattern. So guys, thanks so much for watching. If you're new to the channel and you want to enter the giveaway for these ledgers, we're going to be doing two. Okay, we came to the conclusion on this channel, meaning each person, two people are going to win. Okay, we're going to get two winners. And all you have to do to win that is leave a comment below and leave a like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, ding that bell, and let's just get into the data. So Bitcoin seems to have found some resistance right around that $8,400, $8,300 area where we had this box drawn on here 4 days before it even reached this. Okay, so this area proved to be considerable resistance for the time being and a potential place just for a pullback. Guys, now what do we say on this channel all the time? We just say that when we get big moves up, and this is just one of the most common sense things you can do with a market. When we get big moves up, we usually get big moves down. And when we get big moves down, we usually get big moves up. Usually when the volatility increases, it's not usually just one direction forever or one direction down forever. It's usually like a mix. Things just get really hype up and down. Now, obviously this was a predicted move up as this is a bullish pattern, and that's why we got to move up. As well, guys, I do want to say too, I see people like commenting about Iran and everything like that. Guys, I don't think that has anything to do with it. Some of you guys might disagree, but I think that the solid tentacles of this make up most of this. Maybe at some point it could affect Bitcoin, but again, the thing about Bitcoin being $24,000 is not even true. That was disproven like days ago, the day that news came out. So be very careful with that. Another thing, people always try to attach news to price with everything. So like they'll look at the price, they'll see it did this or that, and then they'll say, oh, well, a piece of news happened on this day, so that news had to be the reason for this. And it's just so, I think, lazy in terms of analysis. It's such a lazy thing to do, just to say, well, this happened at the same time, ergo, these things are correlated. It doesn't make much sense. It makes about as much sense as, you know, cooking some soup and then taking your sock and pouring the soup in your sock. I don't know many people that eat soups out of their socks. So come on, get your head out of your butts and let's jump back into reality. So with that being said, as you saw from the clip at the beginning of the video, we have some very key targets here. Before we start getting into the 2020 summer run that we're very excited about, only 6 months away, a little less than 6 months away, okay, we have two key areas here. So the one thing we have to look at, as mentioned in yesterday's video, is this gap that needs to be filled, most likely on the futures here. Okay, guys. Again, this has just been so reliable so far, and it will most likely come down to these levels. So what are these levels? About 76, 7,700, about 7,600 really, the lowest it has to do to completely fill this. Now you might be thinking, that's not really that big of a pullback. That's only another $400 from where we are now. And guys, that's why we want to talk about this possibility first, because usually with an inverse head and shoulders, it would come back to this area to actually touch on the neckline, which we've been talking about for weeks now. And that would be right around the 73, 73.50 area. So right about here. So we could see something like this and a bounce up. But guys, I want to talk about something else that lines up perfectly with that 76, which is right where the CME gap is. And that is this. If this can turn into consistent still support as it was for the past few weeks, going all the way back to the last few weeks of November, this area right here actually is right at the $7,700, $7,600 level right here. Okay, now that would be really good for a few reasons. One, it would fill the gap. That requirement would be met. and 2 is that it would stay above this key market structure trend line. And guys, what that would mean too is that it would just be more of a confirmation that this pattern is much more than an inverse head and shoulders. Because guys, as we've been saying for weeks, is that there's so many things you have to factor into your analysis. It cannot be one thing. You can't find one triangle or like one wedge and be like, that's it. You know, this is it. You might find something that looks like a perfect triangle, but if the only thing you factor in is just that triangle, you're most likely going to be wrong. You want to factor in as much of the data, as much of the patterns, as much of the key resistance, support, Fibonacci's, moving averages, all that kind of stuff. You want to factor as much of it in as possible and then come to conclusions. All right, so that's very important to note. And so with that being said, if this was confirmed here, if 76 or 77-ish was held up as support, again, we most likely definitely want to come down to at least like 76.50. So if we did go a little bit below this line, I mean, clearly you see we get wicks even when it was finding support along this area here. Okay, look at this. Even as it was finding support along this bottom key market structure trend line, you see there were still wicks. 1, 2, 3, at least 3 right there, and then it found some here before it actually fell through it, right? So if we find some support over the next few days on this and bounce off that, not only do we leave ourselves in a position where we're much higher than the breakout happened to continue upwards, not only that, but we find ourselves on some key long-term support, okay? And that's kind of going to come into play when I talk about the 2020, summer of 2020 prediction. Very interesting summer 2020 analysis. That'll come into play. This is a very key line, okay? This has more to do than just short-term trades and short-term buying of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. This is a very long-term key pattern that we use in long-term frames as well as short time frames when it actually does hold up, as it's been since the middle of November. And so as well, guys, the inverse head and shoulders obviously went to the very top. It's actually crazy. This was like a perfect breakout. This is absolutely beautiful. It actually went a little bit above what the breakout target was. It was right around 8,400 exactly, and it went up to like 8,470 on Coinbase, about that same thing on other exchanges. So it actually completely broke. Okay, this was a perfect breakout. So anyone panicking, there's literally no reason to at this point, because so far this has been a perfect break, literally the exact height, completely confirmed, and then what happens is you usually get a pullback. So that's exactly what's happening so far. Now we're actually getting a bounce right now, and so for that I kind of want to zoom into this chart here. We bounced right at about 78.70 or 78.76, and currently we're back at like 8,000. But that doesn't mean that, you know, we're just going to bounce and keep going up. So I want to talk about this possibility though, because it is a possibility that we only come back as far as we've come back to the 78, about $600, a little over $600 from where we actually topped out yesterday. So a $600 retrace so far, but that could as well continue up, guys. I think there's a lot of bullish momentum. One thing we did see come in a much bigger way was some nice volume. Very similar to we saw that big bounce on December 18th. We actually saw about the same amount of volume, okay? Right here, you usually see that built up volume like that in general before you see these big moves. You can see it's a mix of red and a mix of green, but we're starting to get some bigger candles, so hopefully that pattern can continue. In my opinion, I don't really see any other reason or way the market would be moving right now, as 7 months of consolidation, very, very bullish pattern, break up perfectly, retrace as expected. So far, everything is absolutely great. Now, the possibilities are a bounce similar to, very close to where we are now, maybe about 78. A bounce off that 76 or 77 is ideal in my opinion, or a bounce off that 73, 74 right on the neckline is very important as well. And keep in mind, it actually could go a little bit below that, but most likely it shouldn't to remain bullish. So this would be like the lowest it could possibly go, in my opinion, and still remain bullish for this pattern. So keep that in mind, guys. So now I kind of want to switch over to the 2020 summer prediction, or at least looking on the summer 2020 chart, you guys. So by summer of 2020, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know what's going on. So around May of 2020 is the Bitcoin halving. Now that's going to be absolutely vital for the entire market's health, okay? Without a doubt in my mind, summer 2020 is going to be huge for Bitcoin. And guys, naturally that also means it'll be huge for crypto as Bitcoin is the market leader. Now something actually interesting we note, you can't really see it too much now. None of the other coins are really up much yesterday. It was mainly Bitcoin. Mainly Bitcoin was the one taking up all the gains. You can see that illustrated here with the Bitcoin dominance being 69%. Okay, we look at the last year, Bitcoin dominance has only been increasing so far. All that means is that Bitcoin is really kicking it off. And guys, historically, when we start bull turnarounds, bullish momentum, all of the money does flow into Bitcoin. In the past, all we've seen altcoins, when they rise, it's always been kind of an afterthought and a reaction to Bitcoin taking the first step. So again, Bitcoin's the market leader in terms of what has to move first. And that holds true on short time frames, short pumps, and as well as massive reversals in the overall trend. So guys, there's a few things to factor in. Okay. For one, this Bitcoin halving is going to have a lot of hype behind it. We are literally months away at this point, and I think over time, when we're about a month or two out, about a month out, it'll probably be peak excitement and peak hype for that halving. As we saw with Litecoin, it's very much kind of the case. I don't think it's priced in just yet, but I definitely think the psychology in the market, everyone will be getting hype around that time. Now, at the very least, in my opinion, I think that we're at the very least going to touch on these previous highs of 2019 of around 14,000. Okay, so within the next 4 to 5 months, I definitely think we're going to be at least testing 13 or 14,000. And what's crazy is I think that's a little bit conservative, and the reason I say that is because I think you have to factor in the hype, and the hype can almost never be factored in terms of measuring it. So I definitely think that as things start to get pretty rowdy, and as things start to play out even over the next month, as we see this move play out and see what really happens with it, I think things are going to get pretty nuts, and we can see things just snowball, absolutely snowball into a massive run. Will there be a pullback after the halving? I definitely think that's possible as well. Usually when the hype leaves, some of the price leaves temporarily as well. So guys, keep that in mind. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one, and this is just getting super duper fun.